This is Joe Cook interviewing Sipho Eric Inglovu on the 3rd of July 2018 in Northfield. Sipho was born on the 30th of 10th 1994 in Zimbabwe and migrated to the UK in 2003. Could you tell me a bit about your family background?
So I was born to my parents who are of two different tribes in Zimbabwe. So my mother is of the Shona tribe and my dad is of the Ndebele tribe. So the history is that they would have wars, and they were warring tribes for a very long time. But somehow they sort of came up with this Romeo and Juliet type of story. But yeah, so I was born of them in Zimbabwe.
Could you tell me a bit about your early life in Zimbabwe?
So it was very short. I stayed in Zimbabwe for 3 weeks before moving to South Africa, and then I stayed in South Africa for 9 years. But I would travel back and forth to Zimbabwe. So what was interesting is that I had to identify as being a Zimbabwean because my experience in South Africa, my schooling, and just the way that different local southern tribes are represented, I was constantly reminded that I am from Zimbabwe. So I had to identify, even though I didn't really know much about the rural landscape, and because it's a very rural place, as Zimbabwe is. So I didn't really have a lot of time there, but I had to live out my life in another country, being Zimbabwean. And I didn't really understand what that meant, really.
Could you tell me more about the representation of the tribes in Zimbabwe?
So it depends on who you're talking to and who you're listening to as well. So the perspectives. There are still stereotypes now, depending on. If you're talking to someone from the Ndebele tribe, they might say something about people of the Shona tribe and vice versa. So the representation can be very biased. But I think at the end of the day, they're obviously just people that they're of the same country. But the languages does create a barrier. And you can tell it's the stigmas attached because as far as I know and from what I've seen growing up, it was never really encouraged or even accepted that someone who's from the in Ndebele tribe who spoke in Ndebele would ever learn then to speak Shona. Like it was never a thing where you learn the other person's language because that's gonna help you to advance. Because they were so this is separate and so this is separated. But yeah, as far as I can see, they're just people, obviously, who live in the same land and they want the best for their country. But the stigmatization has meant that they've made enemies of each other, and that's played out in the way that they've represented each other.
Could you tell me about some of your early memories in South Africa?
Yeah, South Africa shaped a lot of the way I think right now. I was exposed to a lot of things which I shouldn't have, unfortunately, at that age. I was very blessed to have had my parents because they both worked really hard to try and provide for me. I just remember them always working, and I remember standing out as a kid because we lived in a block of flats, and there was all these people around. I remember kids used to pick on me, and the understanding now is that my parents had worked so hard in the block that we lived in. my dad was the only person who owned the property that we lived in. The school which I got sent to was just behind Nelson Mandela's house. So I lived in Johannesburg, and that school in Holton, it was very, very far. So transport was actually organized for me, and this had to be paid for. Whereas all the local kids had to go to the local schools in Johannesburg. And this did create a lot of tension between me and some of the people I was growing up around with. But then my dad, because he worked so hard, he worked as a barman in the Hilton Hotel. He'd been promoted and been offered a job opportunity in Scotland. And then from Scotland, that's how he came to England. So I at this point, I was about, this is 6'6". And he left, so I didn't see him for... a good few years. He'd come back and visit, and we'd go out there and visit. But then my mum and my little brother then also went to England by the time my dad was in England. So I had to stay in South Africa because I had to finish school. Like, the schooling system was a bit different. I couldn't just leave. And so between the ages of 7 to 9, I was like living with my aunties, and my parents would send money back, but to organize transport and like to take care of me, but somehow that money just wasn't getting to the transport people. So I was then having to walk to school. So I would walk for 2 hours to school and 2 hours back from school. And so as a young child, between the ages 7 and 9, I was seeing a lot of crime and really like horrible behavior in Johannesburg, and it just exposed me to a lifestyle which I didn't understand and I definitely didn't agree with, and I think I was exposed to it a bit too young.
Could you tell me more about some of the things you saw in Johannesburg?
People being robbed, dead bodies, people being beat up, people being chased. I remember one incident in particular where I'm looking out of the balcony of the flat, and this one guy is running along the road. His head is bleeding, his clothes are ripped, and it seemed like there were like 50 to over 100 people chasing after him with machetes and bricks and long sticks. But that was something which I'd seen and I'd hear about very often. Like, people would be attacked by a lot of different people. So these are some of the experiences. I remember as well, because South Africa is a place where people of different cultures are there. So people from we speak is it closer, vendors there, Zimbabwe, and that's how it's got 2 different tribes, and South Africa itself has so many different languages. Like, the whole southern African region invites different people, but then obviously you have people from all over Africa coming to South Africa as well. So it's very multicultural and diverse, but there have been problems. And when I was growing up during the 90s, and there were lots of problems. That people were being stigmatized, people being separated, and it was a classic thing of like, you don't mess with that person because that person's dirty, and you don't mess with like that person because that person's homosexual. So all these different things, and people would die at the end of it. So it was very, very dangerous. But somehow nobody ever really did anything to me. I was actually known. Like, I would walk around and people knew who I was because of my parents. So nobody ever tried to recruit me, because I would see children my age who were working for gangs and gangsters. So as a child, I was always very observant, and I had the opportunity to just look, but I couldn't really do anything to help. So those are just some of the incidents which I saw.
Could you tell me more about going to your first school in South Africa?
So the first, educational institution would be a crèche, which I think that's basically a nursery. So that was a lot of fun. I was 5 years old. I didn't talk at this point, because I didn't talk until I was 5 years old. If you look back at my pictures now, I'm really cute. I got my big ears poking out. I didn't like Father Christmas. I didn't trust him at all. Still don't. But I had a great fifth birthday party there. And there were these two twin girls who were sitting next to me, and then there were two twin boys sitting next to them. So like it was just fun. It was just fun times. Then I had party rings. My fifth birthday party. It was a really good experience. I still do actually think remember when I was at that crèche. Because I grew up watching DSTV, which is a digital satellite television, an equivalent of cable in America, or Sky or Virgin here in England. So I grew up knowing about English, like the English language, because I would watch Powerpuff Girls, Kim Possible, the Disney Channel, like that was all me, Power Rangers. So I grew up speaking my mother tongue, but then listening to English programs. And what the crèche, like what was a big deal for me was that my teachers taught me in English. So all of a sudden, like literally the way that information is being transmitted to me is in this language, and there was an accent to it, and there was a certain persona, that there were manners associated with it. There just became this whole culture associated with English. So it became a big thing into how I was exposed to this language and this culture. And obviously at this point I didn't know that there was such a thing, there was such a country as England. So it opened me up to a new experience, even though I'd experienced part of it, and that I'd watch shows and listen to music. Being taught in this way really then started to expose me to a different way of transmitting language, and this then piqued my interest into people, because I think a massive question I had was, why is this person who is like me, they're human, but they're different in the way that they're talking, like their accent, and like it was very different to the way my parents spoke to me. So yeah, it was a very, very interesting time, and as I said, I still reflect upon like my first time in crèche.
Can you tell me about any of the friends you had during crèche?
Yeah, the friends were really cool. And two of them like became my best friends afterwards as well. So I don't remember like not being friends with anybody except for Santa Claus. But everybody just having fun. I just remember we were eating a lot. We were playing with paste. We're taking really cool pictures. But then there were these two guys. I can't remember their names, unfortunately. Like I lost contact with a lot of people when I left South Africa. There was just these two guys. Well, one of them was quite like a big guy, like he was really small, had chubby cheeks. It was really cool. Then there was this really tall guy, and I was in the middle, so I was totally the leader of this crew. And we actually went like to the same high school then. I don't know what you'd call it. But yeah. So like I had really good friends at this time. And we just always had fun as kids.
So from crèche you went to primary school. Could you tell me a bit about the primary school you went to?
So the primary school is a massive shocker to me, because I'm going from being with 5-year-olds all in the same class, wearing their own clothes, to now I'm in this primary/high school. It's an amalgamation. And there's all these big kids, and we all had to wear uniform. We all had to be smart, and it was a massive place as well. I just felt like how could I have prepared for something like this? Because I went from like a really small class to like a massive school. So again, there's older kids and I'm a smaller kid, and like we're all smaller kids. So obviously, like I saw and I felt bullying. I just saw like really aggressive behavior. Saw people not being nice to each other. And again, it's this thing of where like I can't actually do anything about it. But then leading on from crèche, I've been introduced to English and the English language, and it as a way to disseminate information. My first teacher in the school is she was a white British teacher with blue eyes. Now this is obviously a big deal to me because it's a fair skinned lady who's teaching me with blue eyes. I've never ever seen this. I never knew it existed. And again, I still remember because this was just not the norm to me. And what was interesting, because I guess like she is the only white person who I ever really noticed. There might be more around me, but at this point, she's the only one I noticed. And she's leading the class. So this is massive because I guess you might look at this and saying that it's a minority, like she's a minority and she's leading a majority class. So this is a big deal for me. But she was a great and very understanding teacher, and I do remember her. And she was one of the things I would look forward to. And at this point, I really started to enjoy school and I really started to enjoy learning. And it was just because what I was learning and how it was being taught was proving to be, it seemed like it'd be really effective for me in the future. I don't know what it was which I believed, but and what it was which I enjoyed. But I definitely enjoyed being in class more than I did being on the playground and running around. Because the playground was just way too big. I'd get lost in it. I'd actually get lost in it. Like if the bell rang and I was on the other side of the field, I'm actually late because I'm not going to get back in time. Yeah, it was crazy.
So after primary school was around the time you were coming to migrate to England. Could you tell me a bit about the lead up to migration and your journey getting to England?
So a lot is happening in the lead up. It's me and my parents who are living in this 2-bedroom flat. I'm having the best time. I was so spoilt from the age of like when I was born all the way up until I was 7. When I was born, like in those early years, like it was very difficult for my parents. We didn't, as a family, we didn't really have a place of our own. I'm hearing from my parents. And we were moving around, and my parents weren't getting as much support, and it was just them, and they had me, a young child, but somehow they settled, and like my dad had to sell like his wedding ring, they had to sell furniture because things just got really bad. So we got to a point, like where things were all right. Like my parents were making sufficient amount of money. My dad owns his flat. So I'm getting spoiled. Like I got my first tricycle, so I'm riding around in this flat. I'm getting new clothes. Obviously we've got DSTV, so this is a big deal because we can watch shows all over the world. Like we got Days of Our Lives, we got the Disney Channel. Like it's popping off in my house. It's incredible. And we were really close as well. Like a 2-bedroom flat. My parents tried to put me in the other room. I was like, nope. So they bought me a bed and put it into their room because their room was quite big. And my dad made a gym of the other one, and the other room was on the balcony. Like it's like an enclosed balcony. So like no wind and no cold and nothing. It's beautiful out there, and he made a gym out there. So like we're really close, and we're having a lot of fun. And yeah, it's best. Like I'm having an incredible time up until I'm 7, because this is when my brother's born, and things change. Like no one's paying attention to me. No one cares about me anymore. No one loves me anymore. This is how I'm feeling. So he's born and he's crying all the time. It's just annoying. It's just noise. It's just everywhere. It's like there's no peace and quiet for me to just play and just watch Superman. It's just not cool. I'm not down with it at all. Like he should be banned. And they have the party as well when he was born. And I didn't have a party that year for my birthday because he's born in August. My birthday's in October, so you know what I mean. Like I like things just different. It's just not cool. But yeah, so we're really close. My brother's born, so like I'm noticing and I'm feeling changes now. Because I'm in a different school at this point as well. And then my aunties, and one uncle, they move into the flat. So this is just a 2-bedroom flat, and it's just the 4 of us. But then now there's more people living in this flat, And I think that I've got about three aunties and two cousins. All of them are female. And one uncle. And then I've got a younger cousin who's a boy. Everybody just moves into this flat. I'm not exactly sure why, but things are happening. But again, these are changes which are happening in the lead up. My dad then goes, to Scotland, then England. I don't see him for a while. And then like a year later, my mom and my little brother go. And I was like what? So it was, like who am I going to be left with here? So then my family goes, and I'm left with my aunties and my cousins and my uncle. And things are just very different because I'm not treated as I'm used to being treated by my parents. So I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like as happy. And it's not as nice. And then my parents sort things out for me. I finished school. And I come over to England.
Could you tell us a bit more about the actual journey to England?
The journey was popping because I was 9 years old. It was a few days before my birthday. I got on the plane by myself and I was going to see my parents. So I'm very, very excited. My uncle drives me to the airport. Actually, before that, there are these bullies like where I live, like in the block of flats. Not really bullies; they're just older than me. So used to pick on me, and we used to watch wrestling all the time. Like it's a massive thing, and they used to pull out wrestling moves on me. So this one big guy. And he always used to pick on me. Now, on the day just before I leave, I run up on him. I slap him on the back of his head, slap him in his face. He drops to the floor. Then there's this wrestler by the name of Chris Jericho. I pick him up by his legs and I do the walls of Jericho on him. And I'm like, yeah, you take that. Yeah, that's what you get. And then I run away. And he's never seen me again because I was on my way to the airport. So that was fun. And so my uncle's driving me to the airport now, and he's like, Sipho, don't be scared. Don't be sad. And I'm thinking in my head, why am I going to be sad? I'm going to see my parents. I'm very, very excited. So I get on the plane from Johannesburg. I've got no fear in me. I'm really excited. I go through the barriers all by myself. Like there's a steward who's there. I get on the plane. Like everybody's made aware that I'm traveling by myself, so I get treated like extra special. I'm sat in the middle of this chair, and there's this lovely lady who's next to me who's feeding me, and she's taking care of me. I'm watching Missy Elliott on the plane, so I'm having loads of fun. Like I just had the best time. I then get to London where my dad meets me, and it's really weird seeing my dad because I haven't seen him for a while. But the first thing he does is he gives me a £1 coin and these crisps. So that's fun. But then there seems to be like a problem. So like the Home Office or something have to have a conversation with my dad. So he tells me to sit down. I sit down. Then after all of that is sorted, I get up. But I lost my £1 in the chair. So that was really sad because the first thing that my dad gave me, and I lost it within about like 15-20 minutes. But that's what happened.
And you went from London to Wolverhampton. Could you explain a bit more about arriving in Wolverhampton?
Yes, I went from London to Wolverhampton. So Wolverhampton was just looked like a really weird and freaky place because it was cold, it was grey, and it was snowy. Did not understand it. I'm used to sun. I'm used to people in shorts, and I'm used to just that color. It was just a really bizarre place. It was different to what I'd known. It was really quiet as well. I mean, living like in the center of Johannesburg, always busy, always lively. So Wolverhampton was really, really interesting. But yeah, like we just all adapted. Yeah.
And you started school in Wolverhampton. Could you tell us about going to school?
I did start school in Wolverhampton. So this is another really interesting experience. I obviously stand out, and I'm made to know that I stand out. I'm telling everybody I'm from South Africa, and people are like, whoa, people are making African jokes and putting on African accents. I don't know what to do about that, but I'm a young kid. I'm trying to make friends, I guess. So like I just could go along with it. But like one thing which was definitely made apparent to me, is that I am the only black boy in this whole primary school. And I was actually like the only black boy in the school until my little brother joined. And me and my family were the only black people in the whole community as well, because we just lived in Willen Hall, and it was a very it's a tiny place. But yeah, the school was really exciting and fun. It just had lots of opportunities. I obviously made friends. People were very kind, very accepting. Really incredible to be around. It introduced me to fun English activities, or just that you find in English schools, of your drama and sports rounders. You know, like we never played rounders in South Africa, for example. So things like that, where it's like cricket. But you get to run really far, you get to hit it really wide, you get to run around. Like, it was really cool. So yeah, it was really nice, because again, I'm wondering, like, in crèche, I'm being taught about English. I'm being taught in English. Sorry, in school I've got this English teacher, and now I'm in England. It's weird. Like, it sounds like my life is literally planned out. But I'm being exposed now to even more of what I was initially exposed to. So yeah, I'm quite excited to just be in a new place at this point in Willen Hall.
I'm backpedaling a bit, but could you just explain a bit more about your reasons for migrating with your dad's work?
Yes. So my dad had an opportunity to move abroad from South Africa to Scotland, and then from Scotland to England. So that's the reason. This is simply put. Me and my family were following my dad's work. And I've since heard as well, like, my dad didn't really know much about England and Europe, but my mom did. So when she found out about my dad's opportunity, she had encouraged him. And so yeah, that was the reason. It was just a new opportunity for us. And obviously, as an African family, and having like African people around us, being able to go to Europe was an aspirational thing. So I think that played a part in it as well. And from what I've heard from my parents, it was to give me and my brother like an opportunities which they didn't have.
Could you just explain what your dad's work is?
Yeah, so the work which got him to move was working as a barman at the Hilton Hotel.
So from Wolverhampton, you moved to Birmingham. Could you tell us about your journey to Birmingham?
So journeying to Birmingham was really interesting, because it felt like I was in Wolverhampton for a very long time, but I was there from year 4 until year 5, but it felt like a very long time. I guess as a kid then, your summers feel like they last forever. So moving to Birmingham then, actually no, sorry, it wasn't. It was from year 4 until year 6. So I'm moving to Birmingham. I've already started year 6 in Willen Hall, and I'm already told that, you know, it's like year 6 is a big deal, because this is when you're doing your SATs, and you're about to go to high school. So my mind is expecting for me to work harder and to do better. So I move over to Birmingham, and this is a very different place. I live in the centre of Birmingham. I'm living in Newtown, and yeah, there's more African and Caribbean people around me. There's more black people around me, so it's very different. But funnily enough, it resembles and it echoes my earlier memories in South Africa, but just in a bit of a different way.
What were your initial thoughts of Birmingham?
I think I appreciated it because it was lively. It wasn't quiet, because we lived like in, not too far out from the city centre. So I really liked it, because, you know, there were cars zooming past. Like we had view of a very busy highway, because we lived in the flats in Newtown. So first thoughts was just that this is a very exciting place, but I did have a feeling that there was something I couldn't trust, which was interesting.
Could you tell me more about growing up in Newtown?
So Newtown was was a dangerous place. I was never allowed to play out. I only went outside to play once while I lived in Newtown, but my parents would not let me go out. You know, we're hearing about stabbings, we're hearing police sirens every day, we're hearing gunshots, and we're just so confused because it's like, what is going on? There's this sense of relative poverty around. There's just like there's the sense around us of people who just aren't well. So like physically, mentally, like again, there's just something about this space which I don't trust, that we don't trust. It just doesn't feel like a happy or healthy place, and for that, it's a bit scary. So yeah, it was really interesting living in Newtown.
Could you tell me about going to school in Birmingham?
So where we lived in Newtown was associated with a particular gang, and the first school I went to was an international school called George Dixon, and that this was in Bearwood, and this, you know, just invited people from all over the world. But I mainly remember Caribbean people, African people, people from Pakistan and Afghanistan, Afghanistan a lot. So it was like an amalgamation of different cultures. And again, it was a very, very big school. And everybody would, so to speak, stick to their own kind. So although it was diverse, that there were tensions, and that felt encouraged a little bit as well. But yeah, because where I lived, it was associated with a gang, I had to be very careful who I was talking to and who I was telling where I lived. You know, there were times where I was having to say that I actually lived in Handsworth, because I couldn't tell someone who lived in Handsworth that I came from Newtown. This was advised to me by some older kids who had recognized me from also being from Newtown.
So after George Dixon School, what happened next?
So I moved to another school now. So I moved to St. John Wall. Supposedly, according to my teachers, I'm really badly behaved in George Dixon. I beg to differ. I really don't think I was in comparison to some really high-tempered peers I was in the class with. But out of fear of things going onto my record, my parents moved me to another school, and this was a Catholic school, so St. John Wall. And they obviously did it with good intentions. But what they don't realize is that because we live in Newtown and St. John Wall is in Handsworth, every single day I am having to travel between gang territories, and people see me on the bus, and people recognize me now, and people ask a lot of questions. So it's becoming really, really interesting. So it's interesting because my parents want me to be in the school so I can focus and I can do my best. But I'm now, you know, walking throughout the playground. I'm a new kid in year 8, and I'm seeing people. I'm getting rushed, so get jumped and beat up. So you got groups of people waiting for them outside the school, and they walk out, you know, and they start having massive fights, and it's and all I'm hearing is like, where you from, what ends you from, what's your postcode, you know, like I'm still not the tallest person at this point, so the level that I'm at, like in terms of my height, like I am seeing, I'm seeing knives, I'm seeing like the butts of guns. So quickly I just realized, my gosh, this is a Catholic school, but I'm really not safe here. Because of the violence. This becomes really massive now, because there's violence around me, and there's invitations, like there's like indirect invitations and direct invitations for me to get involved, for me to start selling things, for me to start to, like, if I want to be a part of a certain group, then I need to go beat up some other people, and because I say no to that, I'm referred to as wet, like, and that's one of the nicer words which were used. But I don't really mind that at all, because I'm actually enjoying the Catholic school. Like, we grew up as Christians in my household, and I'm in a space now where I don't just talk about my faith in church. I'm talking about my faith in a school institution, but it's with people of different faiths. So I have Sikh friends, I have Muslim friends, I'm all in this Catholic school, and it's really, really fun now, because it's like this is when diversity is coming in, and because in Wolverhampton I'm used to just being the only black person there, so like my identity is just based around race. I'm in this school now, so this like my third school in England. Oh, it's my fourth school in England at this point, and my identity is more than just about race, because my friends who are Sikh and Muslim, they are of Asian, Pakistani, Afghanistani descent. We never really have to talk about race, which is really weird. It just never comes up. We just understand that as like our cultures, we have similarities in that we get beaten at home. So we were laughing about this. And we understand that, when we go home, like we show respect to our elders. We have so many aunties and uncles who aren't necessarily blood related, but it's just how we refer to them. And we have so many cousins, again, who aren't necessarily blood related, but they're just friends of the family. So we have these cultural exchanges, and it's really beautiful. And I'm really, 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 really enjoying this. And I just don't have time for the bullying. I don't have time for picking on people, and I don't have time for other things like that. And again, like there's pressures to do that. But I'm really, really enjoying this. Like these interactions with these different types of people, and it's really fun. But then whilst I'm in St. John Wall, and I'm in year 8, and I have a history teacher, and he introduces the notion. Well, he introduces slavery. So we're learning about slavery. But it's laughable because he talks briefly about it. This is a 2-hour class. He talks briefly about it, 10 minutes a top, something like that, and then he puts on the film Amistad, and we don't even finish it. We get halfway through, then he talks briefly again about it, and the way he concludes is that that's the summary of Black history, or the existence of Black people. So this is the first time I've ever heard anything like this, by the way. I guess having grew up in South Africa around a majority of Black people, we never had to talk about being Black or what it means. England is where I'm introduced to it for the first time. And if I choose to accept it briefly for a moment, then I'm going to accept that before slavery, there were no Black people. So at this point in year 8 in class, I can't accept that, and I speak up, and I'm asking my teacher a question about like, why is he just doing this? Like, where is this coming from? And he just doesn't respond, and he just tells me to basically just go to the principal's office, because I'm trying to have this debate with him, because I don't get why he's just done this. There's something about it just doesn't feel right, because as far as I know now, my existence is based on being an inferior person who's being oppressed and suppressed. And what's really interesting is that this doesn't feel like anything has changed at this point. So I'm in your rate. It doesn't feel like anything has changed from hundreds of years ago. It feels like this is still happening. So this is why it's a problem, because otherwise I have to accept that I'm an inferior being, and I'm not about that. But what it does is that it sparks this interest and passion in me for politics and for discussions. Interestingly, I have a stammer. Like, I've been stammering my whole life at this point. And it's very bad. Like, I struggle very much to get any words out. My head and my chest always feels very tense. But even that is not stopping me from wanting to have these discussions. Talking about issues about race and representation, which I care about, being able to explore my faith and hear about other people's faith, and I just love people in a way where there's no judgment and there's no basis or a reduction of people based on race or anything like gender or anything we've been categorized in. St. John Wall is really shaping me now into dive into my interests, and I'm now even challenging this in the classroom. No other classroom. Well, it was only history class and geography class, because issues about other cultures always came up, and I never appreciated the way that the cultures were being represented. So I'm challenging this, and this has never been able to go away. But yeah, so I'm really enjoying it, because it feels like everything which I've been through, everything which I've been interested in, everything which I've seen has gotten me to this point now in year 8. And I feel like I'm in the right place, and I'm doing the right things.
You spoke briefly then about your interests. Could you explain a bit more about what your interests were at the time?
My interests were about helping people, helping and loving people. I could not stand for people being mistreated. I could not stand for people being bullied. I could not stand for people being discriminated against. I could not. So my interests were about helping people. It was about making people smile. I was a very cheesy teenager. The type of things I would say and the type of things I would do was involved around smiling and hugging. So, obviously the only time I felt like I couldn't really express this was where rival gangs were walking up to me. I didn't feel brave enough then to use that type of language, because this didn't feel appropriate. But firmsing or spudding, two fists coming together, that was one way you can express an affection which could show someone that they are accepted just for themselves. So this was my interest summarized. It was just about how can I love everyone, and how can I help as many people as I can, so that other people help other people and other people help other people, and to the point where we destroy any faction of being mean and being a bully.
You spoke about how you were taught about foreigners during school. Could you elaborate more on that?
The perspective which I was taught about being from outside of England, and everyone who wasn't English, particularly African, or of having black or brown skin, the way that it was taught to me was that England conquered, like this is the language, England conquered, England explored, England did good, because if it wasn't for England, these countries wouldn't be successful. It was an understanding that these other cultures are and have always been dependent on England, on English resources. There's no independence. There's which is ever represented. There's just this idea that everybody else in the world are children, and England are the parents, and so we had to respect, and we had to be scared of, and we couldn't do anything for ourselves without knowing our place first. It was very, very dismissive of human rights, and it was and the perspective, although it represented what England did, it also didn't, because it totally missed out the genocides. It totally missed out the generations of blood loss, totally missed out the inherited trauma. There was just no acceptance of it, which again is like, if you do something bad to someone, you apologize for it. As a country which is supposed to be the most moral, because this is what I'm being told, that England is the most moral place ever. Why and how can could my teacher say that other countries were not moral? It was just really, really, really bizarre. And again, because these are my teachers, and I'm taught to respect my teachers and listen to my teachers, and I still have a naive perspective that all adults are right, like, and that they know everything. So it's a bit of a challenge for me, because if I accept this knowledge, then I have to believe that I am less than English-born people.
So from St. John Wall, you moved school. Could you tell us a bit about that?
So I moved school because we moved house from Newtown to where we live now, which is on the border of Kings Norton and Northfield. So I had to move school because to get to St. John Wall on time, I would have to wake up at 5 a.m. And get a 6 a.m. bus just to avoid traffic. So it was just a lot, and I had to do that for a while because I didn't get a space instantly at St. Thomas Aquinas. I had to wait for a few months. So this is why I moved to St. Thomas Aquinas.
Can you tell me more about your interests at that time?
So I am interested in drama. I am interested in dance. I'm interested in poetry, and I'm interested in writing. And I don't necessarily get like the opportunities to explore this, or in comparison to some of the friends I know who go to ballet class and go to watch a theatre. But I do get the opportunity to pick my GCSE options, and I'm being encouraged to not pick an artsy subject. But many of the other subjects at this point have been taken. So your languages have been taken. Like the awful, sorry. So I do get the privilege to do drama. So it's really exciting at this point. Because I used to watch a lot of Will Smith, and from Freshman to Bel-Air all the way to movies like £7, and just looking at how he developed and grown. I'd remembered watching an interview where he'd spoken about he'd reflect on his experiences, and he'd really try to live out live as a character as I'd lived. This encouraged me then to look back at all of my experiences, because not too long ago, at this point, I'd like seen a lot of really bad things in Newtown. So being in a drama studio where it was quiet, there wasn't a lot of people, gave me a lot of time to reflect as a character as opposed to just as me. And for some reason, I felt like I had a lot more space to actually present and to explore and to say more and to just perform. And then I realized, I don't have to just do this as acting. I can actually write some things. I can express this through movement as well. So the art stuff is already there as an interest. But then as soon as I'm in a drama studio and I'm thinking about my experiences and how I can apply it, it's all just coming together.
So what happened after St. Thomas's?
So after St. Thomas Aquinas, I then applied to this new performing arts college by the name of Birmingham Ormiston Academy. I'm a part of the first cohort there. So I'm very excited to go to college in the city centre to study acting as my main pathway. I'm taking it seriously, but I never neglect my dance and poetry background and just my interest in the arts in general. So this becomes a space where I'm with dancers and with painters and with the theatre technicians, and I'm learning so much, and I'm just absorbing this whole culture. I'm in the city centre as well, so I get to visit the Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery and Icon Gallery. So these become like, you know, other homes to me, because they just open me up to other worlds. I remember while I was at Birmingham Emerson Academy, also known as BOA, that I did a monologue based on the story of Stephen Lawrence, the young man who was killed due to like a racist attack in London in the 90s. And this monologue here really invited me to think over my own experiences to do with race, because I had recognized being reduced to my skin color, for example, and being the only black boy in a school, to then even living in Birmingham, and just some of the stories I'd hear from my parents, but then just some of the things which I'd hear from friends, about our friends who weren't black, about what they thought it meant to be black, and the comparisons, and people being jealous that they wanted to be black because it was cool, because of the way people walked and because of the way people rapped. But again, there was never any acknowledgement of intelligence. There was never any acknowledgement of entrepreneurship, but there was never any acknowledgement of any greatness, in the sense of we are more than just entertainers, but human. So in doing this monologue, I remembered to teachers trying to make a joke, like from George Dixon all the way to St. Thomas Aquinas. Teachers trying to make jokes, even in BOA, teachers trying to make jokes, that, you know, as a young black boy, there's only something that I can do, or as a young black boy, I must be fast, or as a young black boy, I must have loved it when Usain Bolt won. There's just everything just revolving around me being a young black boy. I remember applying for jobs, and just getting a sense that I wasn't going to get any response back, because of the type of shop it was, and just like, I guess what I represented. So this monologue just became a moment for me to channel all of my experiences into this, because I had doubts with a lot of racist behavior, and I know a lot of people had. So it was really fun to utilize acting and performance poetry, and some physical movement as well, to express this a very heart-wrenching narrative.
Do you consider yourself a Brummie?
This is a very interesting question, because I guess I try to reflect on what it means to be a Brummie. I mean, I've been in Birmingham since I was 11 years old, and this is where I was introduced to the art scene. This is where I was introduced to the power of the arts. This is where a lot of things were just sparked for me, even though they had a history in South Africa and Wolverhampton with my family. Birmingham just cultivated and nurtured and just dragged everything out of me, for it to be shared on stages, for it to be written in notebooks, for it to be painted about. So I'm very grateful to Birmingham for everything it's done for me. And it's like, if Birmingham will happily accept me as a Brummie, then I'd feel honoured, because Birmingham's given a lot to me. So I just want to give a lot back. And I do look at it as a massive title to consider yourself a Brummie. And I think it's an honor, if anybody else refers to me in that way. I think it's something which sort of, if it can be bestowed upon me, then that's great. But I don't know if I can just claim it, because it's quite prestigious, in the way that I see it, just because of its potential and its strength, which has mainly been cultivated through the arts.
Could you say children in movement in your mother tongue?
Abantwana bahambayo.